What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Greg of the Almighty Deathgrave. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, anytime, man, anytime. It's only midnight is what you call a very uncompromising, pulverizing, pedal to the metal, leaving no room to breathe album. Absolutely kick ass. Did this sort of like, is this, for people who haven't heard the full length album yet, is this sort of like, continuing in a similar vein to So Real It's Now in a way, or were you kind of like stepping into more uncharted territory with this album?
I would say definitely a kind of one difference is we've switched drummers since So Real It's Now, and I kind of feel like there was a cleansing that happened musically with that because now we kind of have a different chemistry of people in the band with that change. So I kind of feel like um, So Real It's Now kind of took us to a level of exploration we were going for, but then with Clint joining, I feel like we kind of took it to another level. So we're sort of, I guess, expounding upon what we were doing, and now making it just more extreme and a little crazier, and kind of I don't know, trying to reach new levels of bizarre. At this point, we've kind of abandoned everything as far as trying to figure out what kind of band we are. We're not sure what word we are. We're kind of throwing the word grind around. I guess it's the closest thing we can come up with, but you know, not sure if that really is accurate or not. So, but
Well,
we're playing with those elements.
yeah, a new kind of bizarre, I think, should be the name of the next Deathgrave album. That's a great title right there. Because like for people who haven't heard the full length album yet, I had the ability to hear it now. But for like a track like such as On All Fours or Your Rulers Are Here, is that maybe like a good representation of what the entirety of It's Only Midnight is going to sound like, or is that just scratching the surface of what's to come?
I feel like that definitely delivers a good template of what's to come for the rest of the album. There's definitely some other twists and turns, but expect a lot of blast beats, a lot of discordant, weird melodies going on, and insane vocals and crazy polyrhythmic blast beats. And that's kind of, I felt like those two songs were a pretty good starting point to kind of anchor to this is this is pretty much what you're going to get. But there's definitely some more bizarreness on the record. So
Yeah, more bizarreness. That's gonna be. I think that should be the genre, just bizarre metal.
yeah. Yeah, we had a friend who came, and he brought one of his friends with us to see us for the first time, and he just said, those guys are effortlessly weird. And it was like, that's kind of a compliment, I think.
No,
I'll take it.
absolutely. I mean, because like with a lot of like the grindcore or the sort of like death grind or whatever, in the periodic table of subgenres you're referring to as like it's always pedal to the metal and in your face, but I feel like there is like a weird aura surrounding you guys that I think makes you guys sort of stand out. It's not like you're not just the most brutal, you're not just the most heavy. I think you are like the most weird, and I mean that as a compliment.
We'll take it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think we're trying to cover more grounds. Right now, we're just sort of, I think, kind of falling in the grind category, but we don't necessarily. I feel like if we played a grind fest, a lot of people would be like, "What the hell is this?" These
Yeah.
guys are, do they fit on this or not? I don't know. So
Yeah. From an economical standpoint, not being able to fit in on any bill or something like that may not be the best thing, but from an artistic standpoint, not being able to is like one of the greatest things you could achieve. So,
thanks.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
when it came to the formation of Deathgrave, because it is, a brutal supergroup in a way, obviously your history with Autopsy and Brain Oil, but, Andre coming from Casket Blaster and, Clint coming from Hazard's Cure and whatnot, like, was the intention of the formation of Deathgrave to maybe combine all of your efforts into one sort of concoction in a way, or were you all trying to, like, step into uncharted territory that you didn't bring before?
I kind of, I felt like this band started off as a different concept, and it just sort of kept unfolding. And then it was like, whoa, that's kind of fucked up. Let's try this now. and then we've been kind of spiraling over the records and stuff that we've done over the years. And at this point now, it's like having Clint in the band too. He's equally as fucked up in what kind of music he listens to on his off time. So there's this chemistry of, at this point, of not understanding where we're going with this. But I think that the fact that all of us will listen to, 70s rock, 60s rock, and, I don't even know, different types of metal, all the different classic metal to modern brutal metal to, punk rock, the different stuff. The fact is that all of us are, industrial. We all listen to so many different genres that I think every member is willing to not actually sequester ourselves in one genre. So when a bizarre idea comes out, it's like, oh yeah, that we'll make that sound like us, So, the super group mentality is not even anything that we even think about. We're just four friends hanging out, and yeah, I don't know. We're still trying to figure out what we're doing, after 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I consider Deathgrave to be on the more experimental side of heavy metal in a way. So it's fair to say that trying new things is really not like an obstacle. It's got to make it a little bit, allow for more flexibility in that regard, right?
Yeah, definitely. And being able to play in weird time signatures and not really worry about if, all the cool bands are gonna want to play with us or not, and if we have support of Tank Crimes, which has been awesome, so we're not as worried about trying to find a label and all the things that happen if you're trying to be a touring band. There are things you need to consider. Is there any bands that are gonna want to fucking play with us is like a big question, and is there any is there a label that's going to want to back us or not, or are we just going to spend all this money and record a record and get all this cool artwork and then nobody, wants to actually put it out, are we just going to be sitting on this cool idea? So we've had the help, and support group, and there has been bands that have been supporting us and helping us out and stuff. And so, I think it's kind of nice that we don't have to worry about that. So now all those parameters are gone. And so now the only thing we're worried about is, tickling our fancies with new ideas and trying to push new boundaries. I've already have some riffs for the next record, and it's already just kind of, I've already abandoned the concept of, it's only midnight. I think the next one's just, there's no rules. I'm kind of curious to see what happens with that, because so far when I've been sharing the riffs, everyone seems to be excited about it and stuff. So,
any gentle ballads coming from Deathgrave anytime soon?
Any what?
Any gentle ballads coming from Deathgrave anytime soon?
Oh no, I'm sure some of us listen to Motley Crue and whatever, but I don't think we're going to be doing any gentle ballads. That's not quite in the works yet, You
really shock the people listening to this even more.
Yeah, we might shock us too while we're trying to write it.
Right? That's the greatest thing. If you could shock yourself as an artist, that's quite an accomplishment. That's when you achieved you obtained another level of achievement.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, maybe I'll come up with the ballad and we'll see what happens. See how many tomatoes we get thrown at us at a show. So
I think we'll be throwing up lighters instead of tomatoes.
Yeah.
And, being such a prolific artist between Autopsy and Brain Oil, Leather Glove, just to name a few, is it a different mind frame depending on what project you're working with, or is there a usual method behind the madness, as I like to say, that sort of applies to everything that you do?
I definitely know. So, yeah, I feel like, every band I'm in, I at least help contribute, song riffs and ideas. And I do keep the same personal formula of, I'm going to throw this shit out to people, and I actually encourage everyone's input on the stuff that I bring to the table to kind of do what they will, because as a matter, like everyone kind of has their own writing style, but the thing that makes the style unique is the people that treat what you bring to the table and how, when once they're processed, once it's all done. And I think Deathgrave has a unique combination with Andre's vocals, Fern's bass playing, and Clint's drumming. I could throw the exact same riffs to Autopsy, or do stuff myself with Leather Glove or whatever, and all the songs will come out totally different. And one of my favorite examples of this was when I was in Laudanum and Brain Oil at the same time. I had wrote a song for Laudanum originally, and we actually wrote the whole thing, played it out. We didn't play any shows or anything, but we had demos of the song. It was super slow. The guitar was a little more like ambient and kind of weird on some of the riffs, where with this driving rhythm section. As a band, they just, we all decided we should just throw that song out. It doesn't fit the band and whatnot, because it was not doomy enough. I took the riffs to Brain Oil, went through that filter, and that song now it's called Gravity's the Relic is a song title, but it sounds completely different. And it really just switched the drummer and guitar player out, and all of a sudden the whole song sounds different, and a different vocalist. And so I think with all bands that I'm in, I do kind of keep an open-ended, like, here's the riffs I have. You do what you want, like, I'm not like, hey, Fern, play this bass line or else it's not going to work. Or, Clint, sometimes I suggest, like, I'm thinking a fast blast beat, or I'm thinking a slow part, that's about as far as I'm willing to go. And then with the processing of everything, it just comes out really fucking crazy, on like dramatically different between bands. So, and I do think that's why Deathgrave shit comes out really bizarre sounding, because everyone has such a weird spin on everything in a good way, that I'm kind of excited when I take a riff to practice. I'm like, okay, I can't wait to see what kind of blender this goes through, So
does it ever start off with a preconceived vision in a way, or do you tend to, like, with the songwriting process, I like to say, like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks?
There's definitely a starting and a finish point, but as far as, it's very open-ended. And even with, like, for example, like even with Leather Glove and like Static Abyss, where I write all the guitars and bass and everything for, it's the idea is I want to get from point A to point B in this song, and get all that stuff done with the rhythm tracks. And then honestly, like with those bands, I do the bass last, honestly. So I do the guitars all the way through, get the drums, we sort that out. Not much of a plan until you start hearing it and jamming it. And then, because drum beats might change, I might be like, hey, this would be really cool slow. And the drummer might be like, what about this? And then I'm like, that sounds really cool. Then all of a sudden, so I might have all the, riff A, riff B, blah, 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 all figured out in the order, but I don't necessarily have the rest of it figured out until I start riff milling with the other members. And then, with a lot of that, with my solo stuff, like Leather Glove or with Static Abyss and stuff, I find out all the noise guitar parts first, and then I do the bass at the end, because I want to find any open pocket where I can do bass stuff to kind of fill it out, and not sequester all the guitar lead stuff. In Deathgrave, I do all the lead stuff last, because I want to see what what Fern's going to do with the bass, and and where's Andre's going to sing and stuff, because those are important to what I want to make my stuff fit into the music. So there's different processes for each band, but it is a throw spaghetti at the wall in the end, beyond the basic skeleton. So, I let everyone else put the meat into it before calling it a song. So
Well, when it comes to collaborating with different musicians, when I always ask an artist, like, how the making of an album was, and they always say, oh, we all collectively came together, great mutual feeling towards it. But I never really believe them, because if you're in a band with 4 to 5 other people, you're making a dozen or so songs, there's going to be disagreements somewhere in there. So, but does that maybe actually help, if people having different opinions or different visions or different emotions? That maybe helps add contrast to the sound as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think in Deathgrave, we've all known each other for, I feel like every single member has known each other in one form or another for at least probably 10 to 15 years, if not more. I feel like I've known everyone in that band for almost 20 years at this point. Um, and so we're very candid with each other. If something sucks, somebody's going to be, I will come to practice and throw a riff out, and Andre is like, "Fuck, that sucks," or whatever. And or Fern will be like, "No," or somebody will say no, and I'm cool with that, and stuff, because the thing is though, that riff can either just die or that riff can go somewhere else, and stuff. So, and I think that it's highly encouraged in that band to shoot shit down. We don't really want a bunch of garbage in our music. So, and the thing is that you don't want a band member to play a riff that they don't really want to play or play a song that they don't really like, because it really does show, especially when the mics are open and you're tracking to tape, or you're playing live and all of a sudden you see a sag in the performance because somebody's like, I have to play this fucking song. So we've, when we play live shows and we do So Real It's Now songs, we've clear with Clint, which songs do you want to play? Because you weren't even, these are, you're playing drum beats that you probably wouldn't have written if it was you. It's a different thing. So we've actually picked songs accordingly to make sure that Clint is having fun playing those songs as well, to be inclusive. So I think that dialogue needs to happen in a band. If it doesn't happen in a band and everyone's just playing stuff, because there are a lot of bands. I mean, as a recording engineer, I do find that there's a lot of bands where there's one guy who writes everything, or one girl, and they write everything, and then everyone just sort of falls in line, is told what to do, and they do it. But the band members support the cause of the person, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you could tell there's times where there's a little bit of an eye roll and it's like, yeah, this part, okay,
Yeah.
I'll play it, so, and I think in Deathgrave, there's none of that, nobody's forced to play anything. We will readily throw stuff away because, it is grind music and it's weird and stuff. And, if you put one to bed, like another one's going to happen. So, it's not like we're spending years writing a 2-minute song, so.
Hey man, after Tool's album being 13 years, I'm willing to believe anything now at this point. So, yeah.
That's true.
And I have two more questions for you. For your source of inspiration or that creative energy that's obtained, is inspiration something that can ultimately be sought out or obtained in a way, or looked for, or do you just let inspiration sort of strike you? Do you have like a usual place that you go to in order to cultivate ideas, or does it just strike out of the blue?
That's a good question. I don't have a super straightforward answer, but I do feel like inspiration strikes me on the head a lot, and I do really feel comfortable in my control room at the studio. I pretty much playing guitar or bass there on an almost daily basis, and it seems like, inspiration just kind of just bonks you on the head. And it is, I think, indirectly, inspired by the people I've been around and the music I've listened to. This is on my personal level. I can't speak on behalf of the rest of the band, but, that I think for the most part, it does bonk you on the head, but I do have more comfortable spots than others. I've tried to be inspired before in a situation where, let's say, I'm camping with the guitar or something, and I'm like, I want to write something, and it just doesn't happen, and you can't force anything. So
Yeah.
I guess I would err on the side of it bonks you on the head.
Of course. Of course. How do you know when you're finished with the song?
It's a good question. You kind of don't.
Yeah.
You don't until it's been processed by everyone, and then
Fair enough. And as a recording engineer as well, and working with other bands and stuff, does that at all maybe influence your own craft in a way? Or when it comes to working with another band, you're more or less trying to put yourself in their shoes and are not really thinking about, what you would do in your own artistic time?
I try to put myself in a producer's slant engineer's shoes when I'm working with another band that I'm not involved with. And so I will definitely add creative input in things when I feel like I'm warranted to and it's necessary, but I will never try to put myself in there. It's good to separate the that to a certain extent, but you don't I do think that being a musician and an engineer does actually help you produce a better record for a band, because it does help you put yourself in their shoes. I think, where, you know, for example, headphones can be uncomfortable for people when they're used to playing in front of amps, right? And so as a musician, I get that. So you're doing initial tracking, and you're doing the headphones, and it's different than what your guitar sounds like when you're standing in front of it. So you try to make that as easy as possible for them when people are writing stuff. And if they're struggling on a riff or something, as a musician, sometimes I could say, hey, why don't you try playing it on this part of the neck instead? That way that'll give your hands a little more freedom and stuff to do what you're trying to do. Because I think you're sliding up and down the neck, for example, when you could just be in this position, just switch strings, or that kind of stuff. So like I will give input like that, and most of the time people are really stoked on that. So mostly I put myself in other people's shoes, but I do stick to the fact that I am a musician as well and can contribute, sometimes a beneficial dialogue for them. So, but I will never get in the way and say, what would be good is if you wrote this instead of this, or try to curate somebody's riffs or songs as if they were my own, because they're not. So, there's a balancing act with that.
Yeah, especially like, people ask me their opinions on their music all the time, and like I always have this idea, but like it never like, and it's just like, fuck, like, well, can you still make that anyway, just so I can be proud of it? I don't know, like, so it is always, I'm sure, like as an engineer, you've heard people do something where you just know it will be better that way, but like they're so hell bent on another idea, you just kind of have to go along with the riff you don't want to play.
Yeah, yeah, and they're definitely, and sometimes I will go on a limb if I feel like the comfort level, because some bands are a little more open to suggestions than others, right? Because some bands have spent months writing something, or years even, and it has to be specifically this way. It needs to sound this way in the end. And then sometimes people are kind of, they maybe just slapped all this stuff together over the 3-month period, and there's still some question marks and stuff. And sometimes I'll go, if it's one of those bands and they've confided that that's a situation and they're very open-ended to suggestions, I will definitely say, hey, like, what if? And sometimes they're like, that's killer, and they go with it. And sometimes they say no, and I'm like, that's totally cool. It was just an idea, and, I'm here to document you, but if I can help make a better documentation of what's in their head, then I'm all for it, and stuff. And so, but yeah, it's funny. Sometimes you do have to remove yourself out of, watch people, sonically walk into a wall or push on a pull only door, where you're like, that doesn't really work, but okay,
Fair enough.
we'll keep it.
Yep.
So,
And then they credit you in the end anyway. So
yeah. And I'm guilty. No, but but it's their vision, and I think it's important to keep that intact too, because
Absolutely.
what, if I think of, like, for example, like early Sonic Youth or Butthole Surfers or some of these bands, if you had a producer that was like, no, that doesn't fucking work, you know where would this world be if you had a producer that just wouldn't let them play those fucked up, out of tune sounding riffs,
Yeah.
and just the chaos,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say, yeah. Hold on. Thank you. Yep. Amazon coming here. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, I'm at the day job. And I will say, like I've always said that rock and roll purgatory, or the place you go when you die in rock and roll, is all the ways that songs could have been, all the thrown out riffs, all the thrown out songs that were never
Oh man.
made, like all the B sides, everything that was may have discussed, or the edits or whatever that never existed, that we never had on our phones or our CDs. That's where they will be.
Or Guitar Center.
Oh, hey, you said it, not me. Well, no, I mean, well, the five S's of death is all I hear at Guitar Center: Stairway to Heaven, Sweet Child O' Mine, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Sweet Home Alabama, and Smoke on the Water.
Oh man, dude, you're lucky.
Damn right.
Oh man, sometimes I hear some funny. I don't know. It's funny. It's just a good musician joke. We always
Oh
laugh
no,
about.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, I'm aware. I've heard them all. So
Yeah.
before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. And most of all, thank you for another fantastic Deathgrave album. Just with the release of It's Only Midnight, is there just anything else you'd like to promote for Deathgrave or any other project that you're involved with?
Oh yeah. Well, Deathgrave will be having a record release if you are in the Bay Area in San Jose on April 15th. You can follow our social media. We have an Instagram account, Deathgrave 408. And we're going on tour with Necrot if you're anywhere in the Southwest or area. So we'll be doing that in May. So keep an eye out for us, and we'll see you soon.
I have a funny thing with Necrot, man. I love those guys to death. I've interviewed them countless times.
Yeah.
But every time they tour and they come to New York, for some reason they always pull up to the venue when I'm waiting outside to do another interview. Even if I'm not interviewing them that day, they're always expected to just see me waiting by the load-in door or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but awesome. Thank
All
you so
right.
much. Everybody, we are here with Deathgrave. It's Only Midnight. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.